Very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new episode of Africa Today, our program bringing you all the latest news and events from the African continent. My name is Angie Meher and today, of course, we have a lot in store for you. And starting straight away with some of the news making the headlines, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi heads for Japan to take part in the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD. The summit, co-chaired by Japan and Egypt, will be held in Yokohama with the participation of African leaders from August 28th till August the 30th. We have more details in this report. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi headed for Japan on Monday to take part in the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD. The summit, co-chaired by Japan and Egypt, will be held in Yokohama with the participation of African leaders on August 28th till the 30th. Earlier in the day, President el-Sisi wrapped up a visit to France after his participation in the G7 summit meeting, which took place from the 24th till the 26th of August in the French coastal city of Biarritz. The TICAD conference aims at launching a new phase of strategic partnership between Japan and African countries based on mutual understanding, in addition to increasing Japan's contributions to Africa's development. Last October, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe invited President el-Sisi to attend the 7th TICAD summit. The summit is a platform shared between Japan and African countries to boost the mutual benefits in fields of agriculture, industry, economy and health. The two leaders also held talks last June in Osaka on the sidelines of the G20 summit. During TICAD 6, the Japanese Prime Minister disclosed that Africa will benefit from a $30 billion investment package by 2018, including a $10 billion investment in infrastructural development. And continuing with our news, of course, still related, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi announced that Egypt has joined the Met's Charter on Biodiversity, which the country believes plays an important role in preserving biological diversity. Now, the president made this announcement whilst addressing the G7 summit special session on climate, biological diversity and oceans late Monday. President el-Sisi said during the session that environment-related issues are of great importance as they constitute an integral part of any sustainable development mechanism. More details in this report. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that Africa is the most affected continent in the world by the impacts of climate change, announcing Egypt's accession to the Met's Charter on Biodiversity. This came during his speech at the Climate, Biodiversity and Oceans session in the 2019 G7 summit held in France. President el-Sisi said although Africa's greenhouse gas emissions contribute only a small fraction of the world's total emissions, it is the most affected continent by the impacts of climate change. President el-Sisi called on the international community to uphold the principle of cooperation despite the different burdens that face each country or each continent. He also highlighted the importance of balancing the efforts of CO2 emissions reductions with the adaptation to climate change. The president shed light on the importance of providing sustainable and appropriate financing and required expertise and technology to develop countries to address this phenomenon without imposing more burdens on African countries that could lead to the increase in their indebtedness. In his speech, President el-Sisi also announced Egypt's accession to the Met's Charter on Biodiversity, which was signed by the G7 environment ministers, 5 other countries and the EU Commissioner for Environment. The charter was signed by the G7 and other states after a report issued by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services revealed that about 1 million animal and plant species are threatened of extinction, with an unprecedented number expected to disappear in the coming decades. The president called for increasing public awareness and getting rid of plastic waste that endangers the marine life of oceans, imposing legislations and tightening mechanisms addressing such issues. And for our final report, of course, on the sidelines of the President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's participation in the G7 summit, he met with several world leaders. We have more details in this report. Where they discussed developments of regional and international issues. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi discussed efforts to revive the Middle East peace process and also efforts to combat terrorism, extremism, as well as illegal immigration. The two leaders exchanged visions around the situation in Libya, noting that they have agreed on the importance of consolidating joint efforts to settle the Libyan conflict in a way that contributes to eliminating terrorism, protecting the state's national institutions and resources, and limiting foreign intervention. Macron welcomed President Sisi's participation at the G7 summit, praising bilateral relations linking Egypt with France and also cultural and civilizational ties between Egyptian and French people. President Sisi also met on Monday with American President Donald Trump, saying that backing national institutions would certainly help preserve the unity of unrest-hit countries and end sufferings of people. President Sisi underlined the importance of rallying efforts by the international community to curtail terrorism and stop providing weapons and financial support to terrorist groups. He lauded the strategic relations binding Egypt with the U.S. and the positive development of relations between the two countries. Trump expressed appreciation for security, stability and development Egypt achieved under the leadership of Sisi despite volatile regional developments and challenges. He said the U.S. is looking forward to developing cooperation with Egypt. He lauded Egypt's pivotal role in the Middle East region and its efforts in combating terrorism, cementing foundations of peace and stability in the region. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm now delighted to be joined over the telephone by my guest this afternoon, Mr. Abdul Latif Wahba, the economic editor. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us on today's edition of Africa Today. And of course, today we focus on President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's visit to France and the first participation of an Egyptian president in the G7 summit. Now, the world recognizes Egypt as an important international equation in a stabilizing factor for peace in the region. How do you see this, as well as the president's attendance?
Let us say first that it is the first participation for Egypt in G7.
Yes.
But as you know, that this is because of the political situations in Egypt as the cornerstone of stability in the Middle East and Africa. Also as an emerging economy in the African continent. Now we are in a competition with South Africa in some economic fields.
Yes.
Thirdly, as you know, that Egypt is heading the African Union at the same time. As you know, that Egypt, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, as the chairman of the African Union, also adopted a new policy for the African countries concerning the free trade zone in Africa, concerning the free remove for the foreign direct investment from Europe, from America, from the international or financial organizations to African countries. Concerning also, as you know, that Egypt adopted a new policy for the compensations of the African countries as it was they were colonized in last century. Yes. By the European countries and so on. This is, I think, it is an important participation for Egypt. Yes. In G7.
Yes, indeed. Now, sir, of course, on the sidelines of the G7 summit, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi had various meetings with different world leaders, including American President Donald Trump. Tell us a bit about the meeting and the main points that were discussed between the two leaders.
As you know, that Egypt has a stronger relations with the United States, and as you know, that in the Middle East there is a different political situations from the different decades, completely different from the last decades and so on. So we need a cooperation between a superpower like the United States and also with Egypt concerning how to combat terrorism, how to play as an honest peace broker between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Also concerning the Iraqi issues, the Yemeni transformations period at the same time. We are in a terrible place just now in the Middle East. We have many different political conflicts in Libya, also in Algeria. So it is important for the United States and Egypt to discuss all the bilateral and the territorial issues concerning how to deal with the international issues.
Indeed. Also, sir, the fact that the French President Emmanuel Macron invited President Sisi to attend the G7 summit reflects the depth of ties between Egypt and France, and we saw this as well in the meeting between the two presidents. How do you see the discussions that were held between the two leaders?
I think the most important characteristics of the Egyptian foreign policy is going to all powers,
yes.
even in the East and the West, and not to depend upon traditional powers like the United States, for example. We have a good relations with France in concerning military aspects, and at the same time, as you know, that we have a huge French investment in Egypt, especially in Suez Canal corridors, in underground tunnels and metros, at the same time. This is, of course, indicates that we reach to a high level in political relations with France.
Indeed. Also, I wanted to ask you, sir, about the implications of choosing the conference theme this time around as fighting inequality. What does this imply, in your opinion?
Yeah, of course, as you know, that G7, when created or formed in 1975, they concentrated upon some issues away from economies, for example. As you know, we have G20 and the G7. G7 is concerning with some humanity issues like climate change, like the international emissions in the world, and also they as the French president declared, they choose inequality in the world. This is, of course, to make some balance or equilibrium between the North and the West, between the European countries and the African countries. And as you know, also French president called for to combat or to help Brazil in climate change concerning the Amazon fires.
Sir, does this, do you see Egypt's participation as more opportunity to further its economic partnership? Yes, between it and other countries.
Yeah, of course. As you know, that Egypt succeeded in its economic reform program that started 5 years ago. We have adopted a new economy depending upon the giant infrastructure projects, depending upon attracting more foreign direct investment in Egypt, and all the financial international institutions praised the Egyptian economic reform program from the World Bank, from the IMF, from the international organizations at the same time.
Also on the sidelines, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with several African leaders attending, for example, the South African president, Senegalese president. How important are these meetings, especially under Egypt's leadership of the African Union, and how Egypt aims to open doorways and windowways for investment opportunities between European countries and Africa?
As you know that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met many African leaders before G7 conventions in France.
Yes.
I think his meeting also with the African leaders, aside from the conventions of the G7, this is of course for more coordinations between Egypt as the chairman of the African Union and also the African countries. This is of course to help in offering the African issues like climate changes, like modernizing the public utilities in all African countries, like helping in some sectors like health, education, transportation, and so on.
Indeed. Also, we saw the president meeting with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, as well as the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Lots of talk about collaboration between Egypt and Germany and the United Kingdom. A very important meeting, wouldn't you say, Mr. Abdel Latif?
Yeah, I think it is important meeting for President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and for Egypt with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. As you know, as I said, the pillar of the Egypt foreign policy depending upon diversifications of all the relations, not to depend upon the traditional relations like the United States, like for example, like Britain, but we have go to all the economic powers in the world. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, as you know, launched many visits for Japan, for China, for India,
yes,
and also for France, for Germany, for Russia. This is, of course, to give a message about the Egyptian foreign policy. We are not depending upon the traditional allies. We wanted to cooperate with all blocs in the world.
Absolutely. Finally, Mr. Abdel Latif, we saw President Donald Trump saying that he supports reinstating Russia into the G20. Do you expect Russia will be present in the next G7?
Let us say first that when G7 started in 1979, it was G6. Depends upon or G5 first, and then joined by Canada. And in 1998, Russia participated in the meeting and became a member of the G6, and then transformed to or changed it to G7. But in 2014, because of the Russian annexations of Crimea, some powers or some countries considered it a violation for Ukraine, a violation for the Ukraine's sovereignty. But now, Donald Trump, before going to G7, declared that we need Russia to participate in G7 or to regain its chair again in G7. As he told that we need cooperation in many political issues, many environmental issues, especially in Syria, in dealing with the Iran, and so on. But I think they didn't decide until the end of the G7. They didn't decide if they can accept Russia again or not.
Yes. Mr. Abdulatif Wahba, the economic editor, I'd like to thank you very much, sir, for joining us on today's edition of Africa Today. Thank you very much for your insights. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we wrap up today's episode. Do stay tuned for more coming your way on Nile TV International.